Hey everybody, welcome to First Friday Lunch. I am Tina Holland, and as you can see, it's dark outside, which means that I am going to be not with you live, but that's okay. So as I talked about last month in April, I've got a little bit of a different subject lineup or how we're doing this. So we'll talk about what's going on with me personally, what's going on writing wise, like what I'm working on, and then we'll get to the topic of the day, which for this one is it's going to be finding your tribe or writer groups. So let's go ahead and get into it. So personally, obviously I'm off doing something. I'm actually we're getting ready to open up the airport for the season, and also probably, fingers crossed, if the weather holds, we're going to go down to the cabin and start working on the deck, because we got to put a deck back on that had fallen off or whatever. So we have this really nice deck that overlooks the lake, and so we've got to go ahead and get that repaired and then do some interior stuff, because I am hosting a writer retreat next year in 2025. So I would like the cabin tip top before all my writer friends show up. So that's what's going on personally. So basically I'm off running errands, probably at the grocery store, maybe having lunch with my husband or something like that. And hence I recorded this the night before. Writing wise, I believe I told you guys that I had gotten done writing a short story for an anthology that the Bizman Writers Guild is doing. And I went ahead and turned that in at the end of the month. I think it got accepted, so I will be hopefully hearing back on that in a little bit. I think we're going to start working on this. Me and one of the other members is going to start working on those stories together. So I'm not sure when we'll have a release date. Probably in the fall would be my guess, but I don't know. I did get words in. I'm up to, I think, 16,000 words on How to Love a Lord, which is the second book in my Regency series, my Bad Guide series, which stands for Bold and Adventurous Debutante. So I think we'll get some more words plugged in. So April was Camp Nano, and I did work on it a lot, but I was also helping to put together an anthology. And in some very exciting news, I've been working more with Writers and Garden. I put out a newsletter that went out on the 1st of May, which was yesterday. And also I'm probably going to be moving my First Friday lunches over to that YouTube channel. But don't worry, we're not moving anytime soon. And you guys, I'll let you know what the new address is, and you can check it out over there. And I think Tina Holland will be more writing stuff, but less of this topics like we're going to talk about today, like finding your writing tribe, or very specific stuff like formatting. So we'll be doing classes and stuff over there. But I was talking to a Catherine Noon who also runs it, and we thought that would marry up. I thought it would marry up better over there than perhaps on this channel, which maybe is geared more towards readers than writers. But don't worry, writers, I will keep you informed on where I move. So let's get on with today's topic, which is finding your tribe. I do have some wonderful slides that I'm looking at, so I'm sorry you guys won't get to see those. But we're going to talk a little bit about finding your tribe or writing group, like finding a writing group. So why is a writing group important? A writing group is a community. This is my definition. This isn't like the definition out on the web, but in my mind, it's a community that commiserates, motivates, and champions you and your writing. So what do we mean by those things? So commiserates obviously is, if you got rejected, or if you're sent out all these query letters and you've gotten rejected, or if you're blocked and stuff, people to commiserate and, kind of lift you up and tell you that you're able to get through it. Motivate, obviously they do motivating a number of ways through writer sprints or setting goals. I'm in a group that sets goals pretty regularly, and then champions you in your writing. So like when you have a book come out, or you just finished and typed the end, and people do like the confetti on Facebook or confetti wherever, and say, yay, congratulations. And these are all things that are important, because when you're writing, it's a solo activity. You're usually in front of a computer all by yourself, and to have motivation to continue writing, to get a few words in, to have people cheer you on in the way that you need to be cheered on, especially if you don't have that support system built in. My husband knows nothing about writing, but he is such a great supporter of when I finish stuff. He, congratulations, takes me out to lunch, buys me flowers, those kinds of really, really nice things to help encourage me. But if I'm blocked and I'm having a problem writing something, he has no idea how to help me fix the scene. He just, is like, well, good luck, and that's the best he can do. But I can talk to any one of my writer friends that all were in groups, and is how I've met most of my writer friends, and ask them, what do you think? Is there a way to help me plot this? I was thinking of this or that. Or, as a matter of fact, one of the writing groups I'm in, which is called the Romance Writers Club, does sprints. And then they also do like brainstorming sessions or Q&A and stuff like that. And when I was writing How to Marry a Major, one of the issues that I had was this was originally her husband was a spy. He might still be a spy. I don't really cover her ex-husband or her dead husband was a spy. And so she was helping him, and he was trying to find the spy. And that was like the original storyline, and it was super, super, super complicated. Then I made her a governess at her friend's house, and he is the brother of the friend's husband. So I made her a governess, but it ended up being super complicated. Although I did have this really, really great black moment. If you said black moment to a person that is not a writer, they would have no idea what it is. They could probably guess what it is. And I had a great black moment, but the story just was not working. It wasn't working, and I was having problems with it. And I mentioned this in one of the brainstorming sessions with the Romance Writers Club, and one of the writers, Amanda, said, it sounds to me like you have two different stories. Like, if you have a spy story, it's like this dark, mysterious thing going on, and there's suspense, and there's a certain feeling to it. And then a governess story where you have all this banter and wittiness, and she just doesn't want to get married and blah, blah. That's a different story. Those are two different stories, which was probably why it wasn't flowing really well. So I took out all the spy stuff, and I may use it in another book. I don't know. But I took all that out, and I just focused more on their relationship and her as a governess rather than her being a spy. So, and that it helped the story immensely. So that's the kind of thing that a writing group can give to you, right? So what do you look for? What should you look for in a writing group? So you should look for strengths and weaknesses, both for you and for the group. If the group is, if you're a horror writer and you join a romance group, there's not going to be the strength that you need to level up your horror. It's not going to be there. Now, your weaknesses, if you need help critique, I need help critiquing, because I write really fast. I don't write really fast. I write a lot of dialogue. My stuff looks like a screenplay. I forget to dress people. I forget to say where they're standing. And so usually when I go to my critique group, Word Weavers, I will go ahead and say, let me know if this is working. The other thing is, when I wrote this book, I needed to learn about entailments and titles, and I didn't know that. And so I have two wonderful writers, Maddie Barone and M.A. Depp, who are in my local writing group, my local critique group, who are both SCA members. And so they know that stuff. And so the weakness that I have is able to be educated by their strengths. They can tell me, nope, that's not how this works. Or if one of them is better at plotting, I have a friend, Crystal, she's excellent at plotting. So when I have a weak plot point, she's able to say, what about this? Or we'll brainstorm and get different ideas. So there's different ways to look at that, but you're looking at your strengths and weaknesses. So what can you give to the group, and what can they give to you, and what do you need help with, right? Another thing will be time and location. So if you're in a local group, like what time of day do they meet? What time, do they meet once a week? Do they meet once every other week? Or do they meet at a library? Are you unable to leave the house? Do you need to join an online group? So these are things to think about when you're looking to join a group. Another thing is the type of group it is. If you're a short story writer writing erotic fiction, then maybe you don't want to join a poetry group. Or if you're a memoir writer, perhaps you don't want to join a fanfic writing group. And then when you get into genre, and that's more around the fiction piece of it, much like the horror writers, if you're a romance writer, you're in a horror group, that's what I'm in. Morehead Friends Writing Group, which is another group that I'm in, is a horror, mostly horror and fantasy. And so I think there's one other writer who writes romance besides me, but that's why I have a totally different critique group, because they could critique my stuff, but it's not going to be as valuable as my fellow romance writers who know that genre inside and out and are going to be able to tell me what's going to appeal to a reader. Because a horror reader and a romance reader are very different. They're very different readers. They can both read, like a horror reader can read romance and vice versa, but the expectations of the book are radically different. Now, that's not getting into cross-genre, because there's a whole bunch of, cross-genre stuff like erotic horror and, things like this, that's crossing stuff. But if you're looking at just romance, and I'm not talking about all the subgenres of romance, but just romance or horror, those are two different stories, and there's a reader expectation that's very different. So when we're talking about strengths and weaknesses, what are we talking about? What do you need? Do you need education, networking, marketing help, critique partners, brainstorming, writing time? And what can you give back? What are your strengths? So if you need education, you maybe want to look for a group that does a little more in that area. And if you were looking for networking, like you just want to get together with readers for coffee and talk about, the business, writing, what you're working on, but don't want to delve into all the plotting prompts, all that stuff. You really just want to network with people, find out what they're working on, and connect with other writers on a higher level, right? Or are you looking for marketing help? Do you have a book coming out and you have no idea how to market it? Then maybe you want to look for a writing group with more seasoned writers in it. Critique partners, that's, if you need somebody to look at your work, what are you looking for when they look at it? Brainstorming. Writing time, I added this in here too. Like if you're having a hard time finding a block of time to write, are there groups that get together and write? And there usually are, like Nano, Camp Nano, and Nano sometimes. Nano for sure, in November, you should be able to either find go out onto the National Nano site and be able to find a local group near you, or they also have online groups that will do sprints. Most popular is Pomodoro sprints, where you do 25 minutes of writing and a 5-minute break. I'm in 2 groups. Writers and Garden does, we do Creative Commute on Mondays. Every Monday, 45 minutes, 15 minutes of writing, 1-minute break. So it is tight. And then Romance Writers Group opens up a sprinting every day, and they do 45 to 50 minutes of writing, and then depending on 15 or 10 minutes of chatting and talking and all that sort of stuff. So those are very focused writing times. Some other stuff is there's a bunch of YouTubers that also do writing sprints. So if you're looking to get writing time in, sometimes a group can help you do that, whether it's virtually or in person. And the only time I've ever seen in-person writing groups is usually the month of Nano. Nano people will get together. But I know Bizman Writers Guild every Saturday meets at the library, and they write there. I don't know how long they're there for, but every Saturday they're at the library. So there are still groups that get together and write. There used to be one in Fargo that would do it, but I think after COVID they kind of fell apart. So maybe Meetup would have something like that. But those are the kinds of things. Decide what it is that you need out of a writing group. And then what can you give back? What strengths do you have that when you join a writing group? And sometimes maybe it's not about what. There's this old Mary Kay phrase. Like I used to be a Mary Kay rep forever ago. But there used to be this phrase about the meetings. And one of the things was, if you were down, you need the meeting. If you're up, the meeting needs you. So when you think about this particular thing, strengths and weaknesses, when you have strengths, what can you give back to people? Maybe you want to give back to people and tell them, all the marketing things that you did with your last book, or you learned how to format using Vellum or Atticus, or how to do the uploads on Amazon or Ingram Spark or Barnes & Noble or Kobo. These are skills that new writers need, and so it is something that you can give back into a writer group. So they may not always be receptive. Obviously, if you have a writing group that doesn't really focus on education, but they focus more on critiques, they may not need your expertise about researching historical documents, unless you have somebody like me who's writing research, writing a Regency, and that's the time period that you're working on. So these are some things to think about. So that's strengths and weaknesses. Now, time and location, we talked about, there's both local and online groups, or a combination of both. Moorhead Friends Writing Group is both local at the Moorhead Library every other Tuesday, and also online on Zoom. So they're kind of a hybrid group. A Google search will show up, will show either. Like if you're looking for local writing groups, I just did a thing like Fargo Moorhead Writing Groups, and I found like Moorhead Friends Writing Group was actually the first group that popped up as the Google AI generated group. And then you could also do that like for other groups, like Facebook has a ton of groups. So those are some things that you can look at. And if you're, like I said, if you're having problems finding a local group and that's what you want, because I actually do like a local group, but I live outside of the Fargo Moorhead area. So I find the meeting on Zoom a little bit easier. And after COVID, a bunch of my in-person meetings went to meeting on Zoom. But if you have trouble finding a local group, ask your local bookstore or your library, because sometimes these groups aren't public, but they may have a group that comes in and meets, or no, we have a group of poets that come in and meet every, other Saturday, or we have and they can either give your name to the group if they have a regular meeting there, or they can, if it's on their schedule, they'll just tell you it's on this night and the next meeting is X. So, and then type and genre, that we talked a little bit about that. If you're a poet, fantasy writer, Star Trek fan fiction, or Regency romance author, then that should decide what type of group you join. So especially when you're looking at the online groups, you don't want to join Horror Writers of America. If you're a romance author, you would join Romance Authors of America. And now a lot of those big organization, Horror Writers of America, Mystery Writers of America, Romance Authors of America, Poets, is it the Poets, American Poet Association, I think it is. A lot of those are paid, like you have a membership, like you're paying for a membership to belong to that group. And then a lot of times you're getting things like Romance Writers of America, and I think a lot of those have magazines that come to you, or a newsletter, and so they'll have topics of the month and those sorts of things. And so it's more of a networking and a business, a lot of business stuff. So, and sometimes there's a little bit of craft, like how to level up your game and all this stuff, but it's probably not going to be critiques and writing sprints anyway. That's because as an organization, it's broad, it's pretty big. So those are some things to look at. And then determining your genre before joining a writing group is just beneficial, because for both you and the group, because you'll get, if you're especially in a critique group, you're going to get better feedback on your work in progress, your WIP. And you'll be able to give better feedback. The group that I'm in, Moorhead Friends Writing Group, which is mostly horror and fantasy writers, I don't do any critiques in that group because my critiques aren't beneficial. I don't read horror I do read fantasy, but usually it's heavy romance. So if there's heavy romance in, I could read it. And so I think that my feedback isn't going to be as valuable as somebody, and since there are so many of them that read within that genre, theirs is going to be much more valuable than anything I could say. The only thing I can do is say, oh, I think this needs a comma, and I think this needs a period, and I think instead of the semicolon, you can, but a lot of that too is, we were talking about this in one of the chats on the Facebook group, and I had said the romance industry is much more forgiving of some of the hard and true like style. The style is a little more lenient because it's all about the story. It's all about the characters. And so if you don't, like the Oxford comma doesn't always matter in a romance. But if you're writing nonfiction or memoir or something high literary, the Oxford comma is going to matter. So a lot of times your spell check will catch 90% of what you need for a romance novel. So this isn't to say like back in Jane Austen's days, you still have to follow the basic grammar rules, but it's just more forgiving. So and if you're dialogue heavy, it's extra forgiving because you'll use the word ain't in dialogue, even though you would never use it in actual like writing. But you would use it in dialogue because that is something that a person would say. So it's a little more forgiving like that. And you'll find that a lot more in genre fiction, particularly in dialogue, that a lot of slang words and stuff like that are much more forgiving. But it still is this pacing, the story, the characters, the plot, and those things are different between genres. So some are going to rely more heavily on characters, some are going to rely more heavily on, like if you're writing an action adventure, the character is important, but the plot is probably more important because of the adventure, right? So it's just determining what your genre is or what your heaviest genre is, because even when in cross genre, like fantasy, like romantasy is becoming a thing. Romance is in front of that. That means that the romance is heavy in the fantasy. So determining your genre before joining a writing group can be beneficial for both you and the group. So I'm going to just mention a few of the groups that I'm in. I am in locally, because I live south of Fargo-Moorhead. I'm in the Moorhead Friends Writing Group. I am also in the Bisman Writers Guild, which is located in Central, so I will usually meet on Zoom with them. I'm their secretary. And then I haven't been an active member, but I am a member on their Facebook group. There's a group of writers called the Northern Ink Writers, which are based out of Grand Forks, East Grand Forks area. So, and they have a Facebook page. So those are the local groups that I'm on. And I'm also in a local critique group with a bunch of other romance writers called Word Weavers. And we're called Word Weavers because most of us are knitters. On a national level, I used to be a member of Romance Writers of America, but I haven't been for a few years. And currently I am on the board of Writers and Garden, and also I am an active member in Romance Writers Club. And the reason that I'm in all of these different groups is because they all do different things. So remember when I was talking about what do you need as a writer and what can you give back? So one of the things, if we just go through these just briefly, I'll tell you what they do for me. So Moorhead Friends Writing Group is a critique group. They are mostly a marketing group. Like they've got the books by their members in local bookstores, the libraries, and then they do trade shows pretty frequently, like at least 1 or 2 a month. And so they'll sell my books, like this one, and then Courtesan of Constantinople, Alchemist of Archangel, and then I'm also in a couple of their anthologies. So they're a marketing group, they're a critique group. I don't participate in the critique part of it. They also have every other meeting. They meet twice a month, every other Tuesday, and they have a professional author come in and basically tell their story. And there's a Q&A back and forth. So people can ask, if they're traditionally published, how did you get your agent? How long did it take you to query? All these things that are important to you as a writer. If you are looking to get traditionally published, you wouldn't necessarily join a group that is totally focused on self-publishing. You could, because there's a lot of, when it comes to the craft portion of it, there's a lot of crossover. But that's the things that you need to think about. Like, do I want to be traditionally published? Do I want to, what genre do I write? Do I want to be traditionally published? And these sorts of things to help you find your tribe, the people that you are going to connect to. The other one, Ms. Man Writers Guild, they did a lot. They're kind of winding down right now, but we're going into the summer season. They do a lot of education. So I've world building. They've done classes on world building, and they've done classes on marketing. There's been a couple other things that they've done as well. So they've done these different classes on various topics. So as a matter of fact, I did my Fears class over there. So they're a very good group to be a part of as well. So even Moorhead Friends Writing Group, even if you are not in the Fargo-Moorhead area, you could join, because we have members. Also, we have a group of members that's from the south. Like, we absorbed this group from down south, southern Minnesota. We call it South Minnesota. Because they're like they're like in Georgia and Carolinas and all this, and Missouri is probably the closest one to us, and then we have a writer in Arizona, but we have members from all over the 50 states, basically. I think 7 states was the last one I heard, but anyway, so you could join that group. But like I said, they are a critique group, mostly fantasy and horror. But then they have these writers come in that share their stories, and those are all genres. It is a multi-genre group, so even the anthologies that we put out are multi-genre anthologies. So my dog I think the cat's under the bed over here, and she's like, come out and play with me. So that's the Moorhead Friends Writing Group. I have a local critique group also, Word Weavers, that is we mostly write romance, all of us, even Emmy Depp, who writes science fiction, but she has romantic elements, so it makes this easier for us to read. And that's actually working out pretty well, because you would think that with a bunch of romance writers that she wouldn't get anything out of it, but we are kind of like the beta readers or the alpha readers of her stuff. And so we find inconsistencies probably more than anything else. She's got a really good editing eye, and it gets nitpicky. We get nitpicky at a point, because it's like, this is pretty clean, so just get nitpicky on it. But those guys, and one of the nice things about that writing group is it doesn't have to be super polished. Like, we'll turn stuff over raw and then say, what do you think? What should I change? Especially when you're in the early stages of a book, in case you want to change anything. The other groups that I am in Writers and Garden, which is got kind of getting, I don't want to say bigger, but really formulating, and I'm working a lot more with them this year. And their whole goals are to get on the page. So if you were blocked, and this is a national group, they're based out of Washington, but I'm on their board, and is get on the page, find a home for your work, and give back. So we have we have 2 things. We have a once a week sprinting call on Mondays, and that's like 45 minutes, and we have that 15 minutes writing, 1 minute break. And then on Saturdays we have a craft call, which is kind of a refill the well thing, and people work on things other than writing. I'm almost always writing on that call, but those are 2 things. We have 2 retreats that we do every year, an online retreat, and then we do a founders/board retreat. So that one is a little different, but we're active on Facebook. We have a web page. We're doing Patreon now to give more stuff to members or whatever. We have free and paid options, so they'd be totally worth checking out. Writers Zen Garden. Romance Writing Club is another one that I'm fairly active in. They do writing sprints throughout the day. They have a lot of chat. They're very active in the chat, but a lot of self-published people. There's a couple traditional too, but obviously all romance writing. So you probably wouldn't want to join that if you are a not romance writer. If you're writing memoirs, it might not be a good fit. But there's a ton of groups online that I'm in that I'm not as active, but I'll do like board post moms who write. Romance Writers Club, a bunch of romance ones. But I know there's a ton of like horror writer clubs and stuff like that on Facebook. So you can find a bunch of these out on Facebook, and that can be your starting point. If you're looking for authors who like sprint throughout the day, if like that's what you're looking to do, Heart Breathings is very popular. You could check them out. They do sprints, not every day, but pretty consistently. And then there's a bunch of people. Like if you just put it into YouTube, you can probably find someone in a genre that you're writing that will do sprints throughout the day. And usually most of those are the Pomodoro style of 25 minutes and then like a 5-minute break. And sometimes they'll have topics that they'll talk about in the 5-minute break. So, I think that covers everything that I wanted to talk about. I hope that you are a part of a writing group. If you are, go ahead and share it in the comments below. I would love to hear how your journey is going, how you are doing writing-wise, and if there's a group that you want to give a shout out that maybe other people are interested in joining, go ahead and put it in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. I am going to look up here really quick and see when our next First Friday lunch will be. It is going to be June 7th at 11:30 a.m. so Central Standard Time. So go ahead and pencil me in for lunch.